It's the kind of murder that movies are made of. But now, Crime Watch Daily tells the shocking, real-life version of the sensational case.
This was a horrific crime.
I've never had any one case like it. I'm sure I never will again.
It's overkill, is what it is. It's overkill.
And in an exclusive interview from behind bars, one of the two killers makes a startling statement that raises a nagging question of just who did what in this twisted tale of sex and savagery.
So what I did that night is not that far-fetched. I was in there, I heard it, I was jealous.
Brent Corrigan, the man known in the porn business as King Cobra, probably wouldn't be dead, and there would be no movie if not for an encounter between these two gay men at a mall in Virginia Beach. One of them was Joe Corrigan, then a 28-year-old former Marine who now owned his own escort service. The other, Harlow Quadra, then a handsome 20-year-old Navy recruit, who recalls that first meeting in this phone interview from behind bars.
I liked him, but it was kind of like my first date. I didn't know how to act.
As for Joe, he was immediately smitten with the boyishly handsome Harlow, and soon the two were an item.
The romantic relationship between Joe and Harlow began rather quickly, and I think was precipitated by the fact that Joe's a little bit older than Harlow, and Harlow always seemed to be looking for a bit of a direction or a leader in his life.
Andrew Stoner, a co-author of the book on which the new movie King Cobra is based, says they were a perfect match.
Joe is also very manipulative and very powerful in terms of his demands on what he wants, and Harlow seemed to fit into that.
Joe talked Harlow into getting out of the Navy and moving in with him.
And Harlow became dependent upon him for his house, for his clothing, for his car, for his food. All of his daily expenses were covered by Joe,
who was also pimping him out for what Joe says was $1 million a year in his sex business.
He got me involved in male escorting, which is, like being a call boy, literally. They called me and I went to their home.
And it quickly turned into a huge money spinner, both of them making a fortune from clients paying huge sums of money for the services of Harlow, who looked underage.
And then from there, it just built up until I was handling, everything that came at me.
Anyone looking at Joe and Harlow's life, right from their house to their cars, to their clothing, to the Rolex watches, to the vacations they took, would say these two people are really very, very successful.
Becoming so successful, Joe wanted to expand into the adult movie business.
Hey, isn't that Brian and Matt's car out there? Yeah, they came over to help me out, but they're just in the room goofing off, man.
But their movies weren't making enough money to support the couple's lavish lifestyle.
It was a mountain of debt that was going to fall in on them.
So Joe and Harlow draw up an ambitious new blueprint for fame and fortune. Get the hottest name in gay porn, Sean Lockhart, stage name Brent Corrigan, to star in their movies.
Joe believes they can make $1 million.
They contact Sean and his manager, Grant Roy, and the four eventually meet in Las Vegas to discuss the deal while they are all there for an adult entertainment convention.
Joe and Harlow viewed this as an opportunity to really wow Sean, so they went all out in terms of purchasing expensive meals and offering gifts and things of that sort.
Sean recalls the meeting in this online interview with internet personality Jeff for Justice.
They offered an obscene amount of money to do, a couple of scenes, and I was like, this is ridiculous. You guys are out of your minds.
And Joe and Harlow learn there's one big problem. Sean is still under contract to a porn baron named Brent Corrigan.
Sean's trying to break free. He wants to make his own movies, and Brian is not willing to let him loose of the contract.
But Joe and Harlow have a plan. Harlow asking Sean and Grant during their meeting,
what if Brent Corrigan went away and didn't come back? Wouldn't that solve the contract dispute?
Sean and Grant don't like what they're hearing.
Sean came away from that meeting frightened of Harlow and Joe, of what their intentions were.
firefighters have rushed to a blazing house fire in the Wilkes-Barre suburb of Dallas in Pennsylvania. And when the fire is extinguished, the body of Brian Cochis is found lying on a couch among the ashes.
Investigators say Brian Cochis didn't die in the fire that took place right here. He was dead already. Stabbed more than 25 times. His throat was slashed from ear to ear. And the fire itself was no accident. It was intentionally set by the killers to cover their tracks.
It's overkill. That's what it is. It's overkill.
The house had also been ransacked and several items stolen.
A Rolex watch with his initials BCK on the back. That was missing. There were computer towers missing. There was a laptop missing, and there was tapes, master tapes that Brian had.
Brian Cochis was a notorious adult movie baron known as King Cobra, named from Cobra Video, the X-rated production company he had built and run from his home.
He focused more on a younger male, late teens, early 20s, physically fit, boyish looking.
And investigators immediately suspect Cochis' murderer is connected to the porn business. Among them, a disgruntled actor named Sean Lockhart, Cochis' hottest young star who, along with his manager, Grant Roy, had been locked in a bitter legal battle with Cochis over the ownership of Sean's screen name, Brent Corrigan.
The day after the fire, we looked at them as possible suspects because of the litigation that was going on. So that's, obviously, they come to your radar very quickly.
But it is learned that both Sean and Grant were 3,000 miles away at their home in San Diego at the time of the murder. And police turned their attention to somebody else they discover was at Cochis' house on the night of the killing.
Through the investigation, we knew that he had a model coming over to visit him by the name of Danny Moylan.
Police had uncovered numerous emails between the two that revealed Cochis had set up an audition shoot for Moylan.
We were able to pull off Danny Moylan's application, and on there was a picture of quote-unquote Danny Moylan.
And after distributing the picture, cops get some surprising news from Virginia.
We got numerous calls from the Virginia Beach area saying, hey, this isn't Danny Moylan. This is Harlow Quadra.
The same Harlow Quadra who, along with his porn production partner, Joe Karakis, had met just 2 weeks earlier with Sean Lockhart in Las Vegas to try to hire him for a series of movies they planned to make, only to discover that Sean was still under contract to Cochis, but ominously boasting they could remove that obstacle. And cops would learn that Harlow had even called Sean after the Cochis murder.
And said, looks like our guy took care of things for us.
Police find credit card records and surveillance video showing Harlow and Joe had traveled to Pennsylvania just before Cochis' murder, rented the same car that was seen outside his house the night of the killing, and bought an expensive knife at a pawn shop.
And that's what Harlow used to cut Brian's throat.
And when cell phone tracking records place them both near the house on the night of the murder, investigators know what happened. Harlow, posing as the auditioning model calling himself Danny Moylan, had turned up for his appointment with Cochis.
So Joe's in the car, Harlow's inside, they're drinking wine. Brian at the time is in a good mood. Whatever happened on the couch, whether they were kissing or whatever, you know, we believe they were. And Harlow saw the opportunity where Brian let his guard down and just cut his throat.
And then stabbed Cochis a total of 28 times.
And then they set the place on fire. And then they drive back to Virginia Beach.
Police get a search warrant for their house, and they find several of the items stolen from Cochis' home. But there is no sign of Harlow and Joe.
Joe and Harlow lived on the run for many months.
Joe tells one of our producers from Crime Watch Daily in this phone interview from prison,
we hightailed it down to South Beach, Miami, and set up shop for 5 months. Bought a condo, and we're escorting down there. and we were paranoid.
But unbelievably, Joe still thinks they'll get away with the murder and continues to contact Sean Lockhart about doing a film project.
And this is where they walk right into the hands of the FBI.
Brian Cochis, the notorious adult movie baron known as King Cobra, is dead. Savagely murdered by a pair of business rivals just so they could steal his biggest star. Young X-rated movie sensation Sean Lockhart, better known by his screen name of Brent Corrigan.
It was a classic hit, almost like a mob hit in terms of someone is standing in the way of us making money, and that someone has to go.
But now the two natural porn killers, Harlow Quadra and Joe Caracas, have vanished from their home in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and are being hunted by police and the FBI.
Joe and Harlow lived on the run for many months. They eventually fled to South Beach, Miami, in Florida after their home had been raided by the FBI.
And inexplicably, Joe somehow believes they can beat the murder rap and achieve their dream of making a fortune with X-rated movies.
After he's promised Harlow that this is over, he's still trying to pursue a film project with Sean Lockhart.
But what he and Harlow don't know is that Sean and his manager, Grant Roy, have told the authorities Joe has been contacting them.
They actually reached out to investigators first.
And they help police and the FBI set up a sting to not only capture Joe and Harlow, but also get the pair to confess to the murder of Brian Cochis.
This is where they walk right into the hands of the FBI, who have decided to get Mr. Lockhart to help them audio tape Joe and Harlow.
Sean and Grant invite Joe and Harlow to San Diego for a business meeting at, of all places, a nude beach.
So how do you set up a wire on an individual at a nude beach?
With a device.
Prosecutor Michael Melnick goes a little deeper.
At that point, we conducted a wiretap as they were lying naked on their beach towels, and Harlow Quadra and Joe Caracas admitted to the murders, and Harlow Quadra admitted that he had actually committed the murder.
I gotta stop you right there. Where was the wiretap? If they're all four of them laying butt naked on their towels, where is this wiretap?
Well, what would you bring to a nudist beach other than your towel?
I don't know.
Your car keys?
Okay.
It was in the car keys, lying right next to Harlow Quadra.
And Andrew Stoner, co-author of the book on which the movie King Cobra is based, says there was a method in the madness of choosing a nude beach. Firstly, a suspicious Joe insisted on it to ensure Sean and Grant weren't bugged. And secondly,
well, they're going to a nude beach because they want to film setup shots for the presumed porno film to come.
We were trying for, some form of confession, but really, when it came down to it, it was more, they knew so much about what they'd done that was damning enough.
This is part of the FBI transcript from the audio recording at the nude beach sting, where Harlow says, actually seeing that expletive go down, actually it's sick, but it made me feel better inside. It almost felt like I got revenge.
Is that what you needed?
That's what we needed. Puts them there. Puts them at the murder scene.
Harlow Quadra and Joe Caracas are arrested and charged with the murder of Brian Cochis, along with other associated felonies.
I was scared as shit. I was like, oh my God, what's about to go down?
In this telephone interview with Crime Watch Daily from prison, Joe says at first they had second thoughts about going through with the murder.
Second thoughts occurred when I got a little tipsy drinking, and I said, Harlow, we do not need to do this. We have way more money than Cochis has. And he says, all right, let's not do this. We've just wasted all this time and all this money. And when he said that, he knew that strikes to the core of my being, and I don't like wasting time or money. So I said, F it, we'll do it.
And Harlow recalls how Joe tried to comfort him after they were arrested.
He
held my hand and he said, just be strong, Harlow. We're going to get through this. Don't do anything stupid. And he said, I love you. And that was pretty much the last time that I got to touch him.
Joe initially claims he's innocent.
To answer your question, no, I didn't do it.
And Harlow backs his partner in crime and love.
Harlow says, Joe didn't do it. Blurted it out, Joe didn't do it.
But Joe eventually ends up copping a plea deal to avoid the death penalty.
It's sinister, it's disgusting, we were caught in the world of greed, but we went there on purpose, with the purpose to kill him.
After pleading guilty to a number of charges, including conspiracy to commit arson, evidence tampering, and second-degree murder, Joseph Karakas was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
But Harlow has now had a change of mind, pleading not guilty, and going to trial with the defense that it was Joe, not him, who did the actual physical killing of Brian Koshis.
I will die at the stake before I ever admit that I did anything wrong. You know what? They will have blood on their hands.
Harlow claims that while he was in the home of Brian Koshis on the night of the murder, posing as a model and getting acquainted with him, Joe went crazy wild.
Joe stormed in afterwards, went right up to where Brian Koshis was with one swipe, slashed his throat.
And Harlow's defense attorney, Joe D'Andrea, says he has believed Harlow was telling the truth from day one.
So I believe he didn't have a part of it and Joe was the killer in this case.
But the jury didn't buy it, and Harlow Quadra was found guilty and sentenced to life without parole, still proclaiming his innocence to this day.
I am guilty of only one thing. That was being naive and trusting the wrong people.
And in his phone interview with Crime Watch Daily, Joe Karakas, for the first time, appears to confess that he was actually the one who wielded the knife.
I was in there, I heard it, I was jealous, and I said, this is enough. And that's the first time any news outlet, anybody, ever gotten it right, because the prosecution never did.
But Karakas would later retract that statement with one of our producers in subsequent phone conversations.
So let's address that. Why did you want to tell me on the phone here on our show that you did it if you didn't do it? Why did you want to do that?
Well, because I had such a wonderful, loving relationship with Harlow for so many years, and I still consider him the love of my life. I wanted to do something to help him.
But which is the real story?
What can you say to people to best assure them that this is indeed the absolute truth?
I guess there's nothing I can say that would absolutely convince people that the physical act wasn't done by me. Though my hand did not swipe Kosis's neck, physically, it did in every other sense.
One of the biggest problems Harlow and Joe have is they don't have a consistent story about this crime. It's changed and evolved depending upon what evidence the police have uncovered. And so it's a little hard to believe which version of their story is true.
One person not too excited about the new King Cobra movie, the mother of Brian Koshis. She said in an interview, quote, "He was the victim. We're the ones that suffer from it. It's just ridiculous."